In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. So, guys, I technically went over I finished like the 2400 lecture. But I thought, what the heck? Let's keep going while I'm in Toronto, Canada. Okay. Beauty is meaningless without death. So today's lecture is a comment on how even though the species fears death, without it a lot of stuff would be meaningless, including beauty. There will come a moment where all human beings that have ever been born on this planet, like the way the game is being played is that we enter the system and we leave the system, and while we're in the system, what is the value of the system? My fellow human beings, as much as I am a member of the human species, I am also an unknown life force that moves this moment in known ways. And so I find myself speaking to a species at a turning point. What is the depth of human awareness to reality? What is the origin of meaning in a changing world? How far can a species go before it is forgotten by existence? And in some sense, how far must we go? I find that really the statement beauty is meaningless without death is suggesting that what would beauty mean for an immortal? What would the value system of an immortal being be? See, it's the contrast. The contrast between where does the value of things emerge? And little do we consider that things have a value because we're here. A couple days ago, I had this very profound thought that I was like, wow, man, I got like 40 more years to be me. And then after I die, it is like beyond whatever it is. It is beyond me. So I have like 40 years to still be myself. And what was the value of being a self in a changing world? What is the value of 8 billion human organisms on a planet? And why are the simulations, the way existence has been simulated, so specific? Tonight's lecture is very profound because the intent is to make you realize that what you fear is giving you meaning. Your fears give you meaning. Your limitations give you, in some sense, purpose. They have made us fear that which is giving meaning to things. And so as a human being, when you wonder about how the human consciousness generates meaning, So, we have to consider what the value system of a mortal is and what the value system of an immortal is. Sometimes I find myself in moments where I understand an idea, I see the shape and form of it, its design, but from another angle, I don't know how to feel about it. What's funny is that in this life, that's actually been part of the subconscious. It's not just like me opening my eyes and seeing just existential design. I'm not just like, a heartless camera. What the eyes see perception, and then they, in some sense, value the perception. And then at some point, you wonder about how do you feel about the evaluation of reality. I found myself having a sort of distance from my own mind. This doesn't mean being mindless. This means that I began to notice that there are subtle ways that I can observe my human intelligence and begin to see what is my conscious life, what is my subconscious life, and what is my unconscious life. Even though I have said in the lectures previously that human beings have an inner realm and they have an outer realm. There's a world in front of your eyes that you can interact with and engage, and behind your eyes you are an awareness to the simulations of reality. What the brain is doing is taking the objective design and taking is witnessing. It's like our intelligence is seeing the objective model and then giving it and putting it into a sort of our background subjective film. What does that mean? That means we give subjective meaning to objective design. That means every shape you have seen has been like an empty cup, and your sight and your awareness to it has poured meaning into it. My fellow species, in the comparison of what is the value system of a mortal being, what is the value system of an immortal? Right now, I am speaking to you as a mortal being. The mortal life is like a bell curve. The mortal life will end. Energy levels change, positions in reality change, our mindset changes. To be a mortal being is to understand that you are participating in a game of life where the self changes. To be an immortal being means that in some sense like the relationship of the human psyche is that you're a self and you're in a world. Now, the options are either the self moves in the world or moves the world, or the world moves or moves in the self. And what you consider to be the human mind is actually the extension of the outer realms into you. And what you consider to be the outer realms is the extension of the inner realms. What does this mean? That means I want you to treat your mind as an extension of the earth, but I also want you to treat your body, the earth, the physical world, as an extension of your mind. Okay, what does this mean? That means the human consciousness, and I find myself in this moment being able to clearly explain it, or to the best of my ability. Right now, and guys, by the way, I haven't said this often, but the way I recommend for you to listen to these lectures is to actually sit down somewhere, close your eyes, and as you hear the lecture, try to see what sort of film emerges. you know? Imagine I'm someone who's traveled to another planet and come back, and I'm explaining it to you. There's nothing on Earth similar to on that planet, so you have to, in some sense, hear the explanation. Anyways, where I'm going with this is we're contrasting the value of a mortal life and the value of an immortal life. Now, actually, I'm going to start explaining the immortal life. And the first thing I was explaining to you is that the human psyche finds itself in a projection of self in world. So think of it this way: your mind is how the world is in yourself, your body is how yourself is in the world, how your mind is in the world. So your mind is how the world is in yourself. Your body is how yourself is in the world. There we go. So an immortal being. This is a cool episode. Why? Because I can try to method act like what it means to be an immortal being. If I was an immortal being, probably anything that is temporary, its value would go. That means immortality means yourself doesn't change and the world endlessly changes. I guess there's different types of immortality. There is an immortality where the self doesn't change, the world changes. One can say a snapshot photo is eternal. Believe it or not, a statue or like a photograph is kind of like that self is eternally in that photograph. Do you know what I mean? So if I was immortal right now, meaning a human being that from the beginning of birth has no fear of death, then in some sense, the psychology of fear would have to still make, like the question would be, would fear exist for an immortal being? If I was an immortal being, fearless of anything, or imagine everything in the world is changing, like technically we kind of do have a glimpse of immortality on Earth, but it's more like how the seasons change and we get to see it, It's like, it's like the human being has access to 100 years of like looping on Earth, but an immortal would be looping forever. Do you know what that means? It means that an immortal being would not care for anything it can lose. Do you understand? That means if I was an immortal being and I'm like standing on Earth, and somebody's like, yo, man, do you fear your loss of life? I'm like, that's not possible, man. We're immortal. And then if you ask me, what do you fear? I would say I could fear if an asteroid hits the Earth, and even though I can't die, it's like, where am I going to be standing on? But what I'm trying to tell you is that to be an immortal being means you cannot lose anything. You can at least maybe lose relationships, people. If I was immortal and others were not, that would be a weird thing. There was this Japanese show that very well depicted this. It was called Freerun. So if I was immortal and I had nothing to lose, I could turn probably into a tyrant. It'd be very easy. Or at some point I'll be like, why does it matter? I've seen thousands of, endless, like I've seen millions of mountains crumble. I've seen millions of planets break. I've seen galaxies and cosmos. I'm assuming if I was method acting as an immortal being. It would be in some sense being like, yo, man, death does not exist. As if for an immortal being. And it would be weird because you would be kind of seeing a world that you would never grow. That means growth is sometimes more important than immortality. So if I was immortal, if all human beings were immortal, there would be no fear, right? Like, what would we be afraid of? It's very fascinating. Right now, I'm actually taking it in. I'm actually considering right now, if right now it's 2025, imagine I had lived like 13.8 billion years. That means from the beginning of the universe, I was here. Imagine there was some immortal self just chilling. They're like, yo, man, at the beginning of the Big Bang, there was a pool of energy. Do you know what I mean? Potential energy. And then there was also some dude there. They're like, what? There was like, yeah, there was some immortal dude there watching. And it's like the centuries have gone by, manifestation has gone by, and the immortal is just still chilling in the cosmos. Like, it doesn't even know why it's here. It's like, okay, if right now I just for a moment considered these eyes of mine to have lived 13.8 billion years, let me give you the number. What is that? So, I'm just to give you a contrast, guys. If I had from the beginning of the observable universe, which is considered like 13.8 billion years, into days, that means right now I'm a human being that has lived. Like, you, right now, it's proof that, like, look at my human psychology, like, whoever I am. This is the result of 12,000 days on Earth. Based on my current age, I've lived around 12,000 days on Earth. Now, I asked, imagine an immortal being from the beginning of the universe, which is 13.8 billion years. It would equate something around 13.8 billion years will equal to 5 trillion. Is it trillion? Yeah. 5 trillion 39,450,000,000 days. So right now I've lived 12,000 days. Like, and I'm trying to method act. If a billion was like 5 trillion and 39 billion days, okay? Estimated around 5 trillion and 39 billion days. Do you know how many days that is? Do you know how many days of how even the senses of self, you could multiply it by 3 or something, way more. That means a being that has lived 5 trillion and 39 billion days on Earth, and right now I'm just a human being that has lived 12,000 days on Earth. At that point, I think life will just dissolve into a force. There will be no longer a meaning to the person. Because, like, imagine the first 1,000 years of your immortality, you were excited. And then after millions and millions, 5 trillion days. Like, when I think about, like, and being alive till the end of time, that's like, it's like it's pointless. Do you understand? This world is so fascinating, its geometry and its design, that even if we become immortal, it won't be satisfying. And it's very fascinating why fear is there as a metric. It's fun. I'm fascinated the species hasn't created fear units or happiness units. Do you know? Like a measurement for fear and a measurement of, you know, happiness. My beloved species, I am convinced that it is true, and I have prepared a research component to dive into it academically as well for you at some point in this lecture. But I am telling you honestly, guys, when I realized that without death, beauty, reverence, fascination, meaning, all of this stuff becomes meaningless. Believe it or not, even meaning becomes meaningless without death. So you gotta not fear death. Death means that you got an opportunity. Death is what is rendering conscious manifestation as an opportunity. And the whole point of it is, how can all of us and the species help you activate as the most advanced possible human being you can be? And how do we get 8 billion human beings to behave as the most, to in some sense activate the most advanced behavior, the most advanced awareness? Do you understand? It's like this is a, I don't know if this is an expression, but it should be. There's many ways to stand in one moment in a room. The only difference between now and my youth is that I see even in my youth there were so many angles I could have accessed, yet I chose a specific one. You know? There was a sort of specificity. When I look at my life right now, if someone was like, hey, Mr. Within, can you turn your life into code? And I'll be like, technically, I can see it be done. Why? Because my life has been a sequence of decisions. And then I ask myself, what was informing or motivating my decisions, sequence of decisions up till now? And when I look at it, it's like a majority, not majority, but it's like, some of it is like from me, some of it is society. Like that means, imagine the creature is kind of like an instruction oriented entity. Technically, theologically, we were commanded to existence. I think the soul is no stranger to divine command. It's like if you ask me what are souls doing on earth, I would be like, it's very poetic. They're all trying to remember their original divine command. Every one of you right now in this manifestation, what the idea of destiny means, what the idea of God means, is that you have already, it has already been programmed. The commands have already been given. And it's all about what context shall your intelligence animate through. You see, it's not just a physical moment. The context is so key. Anybody who understands these two words, concept and context, and the relationship of how concepts are found within a context, and context, the context animates the concept, like, that means once you realize knowledge has just been this, everything, I want you to imagine yourself in school, and I want you to imagine all the times that not you paid attention, but you didn't pay attention. The teacher sounded robotic, or you were tired, or it was boring, or your mind went elsewhere, or you were thinking about some other moment, whatever. I just want to tell everybody, guys, the educational system did such a ridiculous, like hilarious mistake that instead of explaining the context of reality, they give you the concepts, okay, and they only explain it, let's say, from one ancient angle, from one past angle, and then they're like, all right, kids, go understand what we just told you. Go learn what we told you on your own as well, right? And the kid's like, I don't know, man, the teacher doesn't make sense, none of this makes sense. But let me tell you, anytime in your life, anytime, any moment that you find yourself that something doesn't make sense, it simply means you can't position the concept into the proper context. Right now, why do you think human beings, all human scholars on earth, why do you think they're kind of like busy working? What do you think, even, let's say there were like 8 billion geniuses on earth, what do you think they would do? Genius is about realizing back in the day, they would hunt animals to survive. And in order for humanity to survive now, it needs to hunt for new awareness. Poetically, the way I see these lectures, like if the viewers of the lecture were like, if me and the viewers of these lectures were like back in like a tribal primitive tribe, I treat myself as some person who went and like, hunted a creature never been seen before, brought it to the tribe, and it's like, guys, what is this? Let's figure it out. All my lectures are not just one-sided me. They are actually invitations to all humanity to advance beyond, the past, expectation. You are not just who your past self expected of you to be. You are an ability in any moment to be aware of that which you're aware in endlessly new ways. That means you don't understand. If the human species was organized, that means if they're like, yo man, does the human species have enemies only in its own dimension? I'd be like, First of all, next level question. Second of all, if it doesn't, how do I say it? Like, I think in every moment of every person's life, their soul yearns to play the greatest game they can. The greatest game on earth in 2025 is being able to be a type of human being that in your expression and behavior, it ushers the species to remember its future. We need to go towards speciesism. Everybody alive in 2025, you know, if you wanted to be, let's say hypothetically, if you wanted to be a rebel, it's not like the French Revolution anymore. It's not like how Che Guevara approached it. The revolutions and the rebellions of the future are not rebellions of a physical nature where people have pitchforks and torches. The rebellions of the future is all about trying to protect the original and the natural from the artificial and the lost. You don't understand right now. Why do you think I say we need to unite the species? The species is under an invasion. You don't see it. You think human beings think, yo man, our species being invaded is only if aliens come and bother us. No. Your species is being invaded by the circumstances of its existence. That means how can we live as honorable human beings? You know, I've seen so many people talk about honor. You see in movies like warriors having honor, you know, or in some sense emperors finding honor. But what the whole point of it is that they have stripped away our honor, and that's what bugs me. That's what bugs me. The pathetic hopelessness of the human species that is convinced by the past. There are moments in my life where I've had to make a decision, and it's like, you know how they say, like, you know, there's like a qareen in Islam, or there's like a good angel and a bad angel on the shoulders of the person. This is like, you know, a sort of view. It was as if, for me, it wasn't a demon or an angel on my shoulder. It was the past. The limited past and the limitless future. And in the moment I had to decide, who do I listen to? Do I listen to the potentials of my future self, or do I listen to the fears of my past? And there came a moment where, I'm not kidding guys, there came a moment where I looked at my past. As a soul, I've done this on this earth. I've looked at my past, and I have saluted it. I have forgiven my past. You know how? Of course, repenting to the system admin. That's key. But I'm talking about for the mind. The way I have done it is that I have accepted that anything that has passed, if we want to blame the past, we can't, because that's the best they could do. You know, that means for me, it's the emotions don't match the reality in the modern age, even if you have in the dating scene. Do you know what I'm saying? For me, it's like human beings don't understand what is happening to you is the best that the power in your realm in the moment can do for you. Excuse me, not the best. How do I say it? Let me rephrase. I'm trying to say that every one of us has lived a past. You have tunneled through senses of self. There has been many moments you have looked at this reality. And out of all the moments of your conscious waking life that you have looked at this world, be honest, how many of those moments were just eerie, unknown moments where you didn't know what you were looking at? If they tell me, what, Mr. Within, why do you want to unite the species? I would say because an advanced civilization, and what that implies, is one of the most beautiful ideas in the world. The most beautiful idea in the world is actually that there's a system admin, that this world is not empty, it has a host. Your task in this life is to become conscious of the host. If you're conscious of the host in this life, if you reach the state of muttaqin, or in Islam, or in English it would be God consciousness, which means you begin to realize it's not that you're a specific simulation. All simulations live to return to their original state. Reality is very magnificent because it has not forgotten its origin. Right now, who do you think you are listening to this lecture? Do you think you're your body? Your body has been changing. Do you think you're your mind? Your senses of self have changed in any situation. And it's like, how can you be a thought if you've had more than one thought? If you've been aware of a bunch of thoughts at the same time? And what do? It's like, can you even call yourself a thinker, or have you become a cinematic director when your mind translates language into film? Like, if somebody was like Mr. Within, how would you explain the inner realms? I'll tell you this. If somebody talks to you and you're imagining the sentences they're saying, that's like a low speed. That's driving under the speed limit of the inner realms. But when you see your force, like how a soul, this is my experience and understanding so far. How, like right now, I'm activating life force to give this lecture. I've understood it has to do with where my attention is and what my intention is. Your intention is how your attention leads your ego. See, it's not just that your ego is controlling you. There is a soul aware behind the scenes. Even though the soul is Mysterian. Mysterianism means it's unknowable. That means, do you have enough courage as a human being to, in some sense, ask your fears to calm down and for a moment look at this world and understand how much of it is design, and knowledge seems to be how we process perception? For me, to advance human civilization, I said the rebellions are not physical. What does that mean? That means Gandhi pointed to something that I think not a lot of historians and even philosophers understood. When Gandhi said non-violence, what the F did he mean? Because aren't we in a violent world? Didn't we evolve through violent means? Why did Gandhi, this dude who in some sense, guys, I don't know if you know this, but I have a sort of, like, I can kind of feel the pain of Indian politicians, because just like how people rob each other back in the day, nations robbed each other. It was a kind of like eat or be eaten world, History was cruel AF. History was actually, like, when I sometimes read what's happened in history, how do I say it? I get disgusted by how de-evolved their ethical natures were. But then I wonder, like, how much more should our ethical nature evolve? And really what it comes down to is, what do you care for before you die? That means get real, whoever you are, These moments are not often. You just have to, like, for a second be like, I had this moment with myself. I've had it too many times, actually, But I've had this moment where I'm like, what am I even doing existing? I've had this sort of a view approach me, right? Where for a moment I just paused whatever I was doing and I'm like, why am I even here? Why am I required to be aware of a process happening which only I have limited control over the known variables of it? So what I'm trying to tell you, for an immortal being, there is no final loss. But for a mortal being, it's kind of strangely blessed. Like, I've never until now, I've never been able to kind of see death as a blessing. Okay. But on some level, for the first time in my life, I can see how it has a value that's not negative. Like, truly. And if I was to explain to you how death is not like a bad thing, this is what I would say. First of all, guys, I'm going to speak to you in multiple levels because this is a sensitive topic. I don't normally talk about death like this long, but this lecture is about it, okay? And I'm going to actually ease into this. You know, I'm not just going to just savagely, you know. So, guys, yeah, I completely forgot. This is a very sensitive topic. First of all, guys, I'm just trying to say that because things end, the beginning has value. Okay? That means, why is it so heartbreaking, you know, that when like a couple breaks up, a couple that has been living, you know, with each other for years, why is that very heartbreaking? What is the why are the emotional side effects of the disconnection there? It's because a part of you knows, I've had this experience often. This is kind of like, I guess, the hidden cost to caring for reality, is that you find moments where you kind of feel like you will never see someone again. Do you know? It's fascinating. I don't know how to explain it to you. Do you know? It's like the souls are like cars that passed by. Do you know? And before they were just parked in somewhere. The reason the emotional feeling is there is because the person's like, all right, I might never see that soul again. Do you know? And you wish them the best, but that's the loss. The loss is what we have access to, and what access goes away. Death means you don't have access to being a human on earth forever. That's what being human means. Okay? And it's up to you and your value system to be like, okay, do I want to base my life on the past? Do I just want to base my life on the present? Or do I want to base my life on the future? Anybody who somehow found a way to use the future, you know, through their human technology, like if you've somehow, if anybody who has like, I honestly don't know how many people have a relationship with the future. Do you know? That means there was a moment where I was like, yo, man, we're a bunch of candles in a dark room. And our awareness is just like the, you know, candela of, you know, the candela of, you know, proximity. We're kind of illuminating. I'm trying to tell you that everybody changes. And, you know, this is how I kind of dealt with grieving. Because my grandfather passed away and I had a kind of near-death experience last year. And I don't know, but some things kind of feels very different in the sense that if somebody tells me, am I afraid of death? I think that the body, my biological body, is designed for survival, meaning that even if deep down I don't fear death, my body will react and fear it. Okay? So I cannot claim, as long as I claim to be a biological entity, that I don't have any fear. Because I don't know. It's kind of like a cornered animal. You don't know, like as it's being cornered, its reactions, it moves from conscious response to reaction. Like when a person kind of like, you know, has a carrot in their hand and they go give it to a horse. Okay, the horse consciously, gently walks up and takes the carrot and eats it. But imagine if like you suddenly did something like that scared the horse would react. The horse would be like WTF, and it would kind of raise up in the air. It's like, oh my God, what is this in front of me? Ew. Do you know what So what I'm trying to say is it's the same thing that there is we are a biological organism, and on some level it is the amygdala of your brain is fight or flight based. What does that mean? That means if you find yourself in a situation where you don't know what to do and you fear that unknown, you have two choices. You are like, okay, I'm getting out of here. I don't understand what I'm looking at, or you in some sense enter. Like, for I'll give you an example. The best example is buffaloes and cows. Cows run away from the storm. The buffalo runs towards the storm as if like, brah, you coming into my territory. Do you know what I mean? And as the buffalo runs through the storm passes the buffalo, but the storm strangely chases the cows. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like this truth in reality that we either enter or we deviate, right? Now, all human psychological expression is dependent on trust, but the issue is you can never trust someone's past because you have no clue what their past, like how their eyes experience their past. I'm trying to tell you, when we think about the comparison of a mortal being and an immortal being, it's like the eyes of an immortal being probably have lost the glow of fascination. An immortal being is not looking at a changing world anymore. It's just being like, yo, change is a force. It's like if you ask a immortal being what's happening, it'll be like change is happening. It's like, and if you ask a mortal being what's happening, it's like, no, I'm changing. So we're identifying with manifestation right now. How deeply we are, though, depends on our context, our framework to our life. I'll give you an example. If somebody comes and gives you a context, imagine, let's look at psychology here. Imagine there's a young child, and somebody for no reason, comes and imagine there's a young child, very smart young child, okay? And the parents ask the child to go do something, and one of the like imagine there's siblings, there's like two siblings, okay, sibling one and two, both let's say same age, twins, and it's like asking one of both these children to be like, yo, go do something you've never done before, okay, like go and do something outside of your comfort zone, like go and give this like a plate of food to like your aunt, this like a pot of food to your aunt or something. When I imagine you're a young kid, okay, so I'm telling you now, imagine out of those two kids, one of them's just like okay and goes, reacts to the situation, and one of them is quiet and silent and just observing, thinking about things, right? And then imagine suddenly the father, I don't know, some figure, some person comes, or even the brother comes and says like, yo, what are you afraid of? Let's go give this food to our aunt or something, you know and so that kid in some sense is not being afraid. Actually, imagine that kid is wondering about, okay, do we need two people to go give the food to our aunt? Okay, no, my brother's gonna go alone. I care for my brother. Okay, so I'm gonna go with my brother. Like that kid's processing reality because of its delayed response. The external comes and tells it, yo, man, you're afraid. And imagine that character grows, that psyche grows on thinking like, yo, man, they told me I was afraid. Maybe I am afraid. It's like at some point you have to discriminate with realizing you are not an image. You are the superior awareness to it. And people who think they're images, okay, when you come and tell them a sentence that changes their image, they get offended. But honestly, like for me, anytime I've been offended by anything, I was like, what was the true intention behind the offense? Do you know? And guys, feel free to share your thoughts in the chat section. These moments happen once, and what do we do with them? All right, let's see where we can go with this vibe. So I was contrasting the mortal being and the immortal being. We're trying to see, okay, what does it mean that beauty is meaningless without death? Why is the ending necessary to justify the beginning? And why is it that it's like we're these entities? When we were unconscious, it was like we would exist and then happen, and then stop existing without realizing anything. Kind of like lesser animals. But we human beings are suddenly in the middle of their life. They're like, yo, whoa, where am I? And so they notice that, okay, the way the game is designed is that at some point we will exit. We will leave the world room, we die. Do you know what that means? That means we've been given an advantage. The human consciousness, compared to any species on this planet, has been given a miraculous advantage. The true mercy of the system, admin, where God was like, all right, humanity, all right, my creation, you specifically are going to wake up at the midway point of your life and realize it. Do you know? And the species is like, whoa, what do you mean? We're no longer just unconsciously automatically happening? And God's like, no. I created you for that which is beyond you. Even man doesn't know. You know why why the soul is a secret of God? Because when God created man, through the theological lens, when God created man, and God's previous creation came up to him and say, "Why have you created mankind?" And God said, I have created mankind for a reason that only I know. I see something in humanity that nothing in creation does. So how can we get the wisdom of externality? Stop worshiping manifestation, folks. What we call God is the singular original value beyond the world room, beyond the simulation. So a mortal being is privileged to access that. An immortal being is endlessly being tested. That means it's like, is immortality a prison for a soul that it can notice beyond its life? How superior will our species be? How superior will the conversations be? What new archetypes will walk on Earth? And in some sense, how advanced? Do you know what the present is? Let me tell you what the present self is. Your present self is hilariously the moment where you put the key in the engine of your existence and you experientially turn it. My fellow species, every soul on earth, human soul on earth, it's very obvious why we're all here. Very obvious. And it's very obvious how here is even here. And the answer is they have convinced you you're a noun based on the past. They have made you measure value through form, but it's the other way. The greatest question humanity can ask, what am I not seeing? That is there. Do you know? For me, spiritual people are still playing the games of ego. They're still trying to be God. That means like you're trying to be limitless without realizing your limitations. There's an error there. That means for me, they're like, yo, man, you used to talk about Buddhism, yoga, and Vedanta and past lives and, the seven lokas and all that. What changed? Let me tell you what changed. I realized that nothing simulated can be true. So if you're telling me, hey, Mr.Within, are you being honest in a simulation? I'll be like, yes, that's why I'm telling you it's one. God means the original being. What the original means, that which does not have a beginning and end. It means we're measuring life based on its form, but we should be measuring it based on its force. And that's what the religious life introduces you. But as if you think you're God, you will never meet God. Or I shouldn't say that, excuse me. It's like, what is the why am I telling you don't try to become God? At most you may try to be like somebody. There is this theory that we're all becoming moderators subconsciously, but it doesn't matter. You can never be God. And let me tell you why. Because God is that which cannot have a beginning and end, because it was never born and it can never die. If you read Ayatul Kursi in the Holy Quran, God never falls asleep. God is like true original presence. It's like a raw force. We're basing reality on the form because we identify with a format. What is aware of the format is beyond the form. There is an original memory within every soul, and it's like it's the task of an advanced civilization to, in some sense, behind the eyes of man, command it to build itself in front of the eyes of man. You see, there's so much stuff more important than us that you have to wake up from your life stream of self-obsession. This is the most important thing. This is, if they're like, yo, Mr. Within, is there a secret? Imagine life was like archery and I'm kind of like hitting a bunch of arrows and trying to create a bridge of arrows. That's how many bullseyes I'm hitting. And you're like, what's the secret? And the secret is, for a moment, you have to ask yourself, what is the most important value of all of this? And for me, the system admin, I don't know how to explain it to you, but it's like everybody's in their own earth. They have to step out of their own earth, which is the self-obsession or the obsession of self-worship that, they condition you, into. And when 8 billion, when a species realizes it's actually, we're not nouns, we're verbs, that's when honor, courage, bravery, might, greatness start flowing through your soul. Do you know why? Because now the stakes are greater. It's not just that human beings will die, it's that the species might go extinct. What the F? Everybody who's the smartest human beings are already preparing for the future. They're in the future behind their eyes. Do you know what that means? Let me tell you something that will blow your mind. People look at samurai and they're like, those weren't spiritual people. How were those samurai spiritual people? They were like killing human life. They didn't care for it. And I'll be like, you don't understand. The samurai were some of the most intense. Like they were not savage, they were intense. Do you know? Similarly, the ninja were not savage, but they were dishonorable. The only problem, like that means an honorable ninja is like the highest type of warrior, I think. Do you know what a dishonorable ninja tactics are usually dishonorable? The ninja's like, I'm gonna throw a rock at you without you even seeing. It is the true presence of whatever we are. Do you know, at some point I was like, all right, I was like saying it to myself. I was like, all right, man, you're alive once. You're not just performing in front of the system admin, the world, the species. You're also performing in front of yourself. That means that you know what that means? That means it's like, I'm going to listen to this lecture one day and I'm going to criticize it. When I look at my past, it's like a younger brother. When I look at my future, it's like an older brother. And I'm like, who do I listen to? And it's strange. We listen to that which we want to become. That means right now I'm in the, like at any archetype, any age. There's so many ways we could have reinvented civilization, and our task is to make sure that the future generations will. Okay? Pretty much what I'm telling you is that death, like its actual transition might be intense, and who knows how it will happen. But we know one thing for sure, that life has a value, and it's strangely too specific. That means when they said life is a test, I'm like, it makes sense. Why? Because you could see it's too specifically designed. Like, I'm not designed right now, do you know, to go and speak to animals, like lesser animals. Like, I can't speak to pigeons, and the pigeon starts like flapping its wings like in applause. Do you know what I mean? I've looked at pigeons in like the metro, and they stare at you like, buddy, you think I'm a pigeon? And I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. I am right now a human. When I looked in the mirror and I'm like, what am I looking at right now? I realize I'm looking at a member of the human species. So by the nature of my design, and the thing I forgot to actually finish telling you, is that the samurai in the book Hagakure have this, there's a saying that it says pretty much, I want to give you insight into samurai mentality. The samurai pretty much were like, die before you die. So they were dead inside. Do you understand what I mean? That's why they were so intense, and they could even uphold the chaotic savageness. Do you know why? Because they were like, I don't exist anymore. That's what it means to confront death before you die. Your mind, like in my dreams, I've died maybe around 5 times. There was one dream I had, which was like, I think it goes in the top, like, worst dreams I've ever had. It was a dream where I'm sorry to say this, but I would constantly like die in the dream and come back to the same respawning point, and then try to die again and then come back to the same respawning point. It was like terrible dream. Do you know? And in my dreams, when I say I've died 5 times, it's been strange, but it's been pretty much like suddenly I've noticed the body move, and still I've remained in the moment. It's more like manifestation is serving the unknown life force that we truly are. And the aim is to advance civilization. Why? Because why is the idea even there? They're like, what kind of world do you want to be in? They're like, I want to be in an advanced world. They're like, okay, how do you build an advanced world? One answer: the human context must advance. That means and just like the samurai, they were like, that they had no sense of self when they went into the battlefield. It's like they responded to chaos selflessly. It's like, what is the potential that is hiding within the true presence of the heart of our species? There's a reason we're all human right now, okay? And the situation is too unique. Too many simulations have lined up where I was like, okay, it completely makes sense that after natural law is divine law. Divine law is actually, it's not called law, it's divine command. Do you know what that means? That means anything you see moving in this manifestation, whether it's a leaf on a tree or whether it's you, it is being commanded. Not by us, but by the original power. Your life force is command oriented. Okay? Now the question is that they've conditioned the human species to be like, no, I have to be in command of myself. But the issue is you don't know yourself. Why? Because we don't even know where we are. As far as I'm concerned, the whole thing is a storytelling It's a storytelling operation. Do you know? That means it's a storytelling simulation. It's as if like our ancestors didn't know what to do, And so they began creating a story where they were the main character in. Then they found each other. Then there was like a story with 8 billion main characters, so they couldn't all be 8 million characters, so they all became side characters, and then new main characters arose. These new main characters had vision. Pretty much what the notion was responsibility level. If you want to know who would have been king, like imagine like whoever you are, just imagine your social circle or whatever, or the people you know. It just if you wanted to know if all of you were teleported back in time, which of your souls would become king in a medieval time if you were teleported, it would be the ones that are most responsible, those souls, because responsibility means you have to become truly aware of the situation. That means they're like, why do you want to know truth? Because it's bothering me that I don't know it, you know. Guys, I need a quick breather. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, back to it. All right, guys, so let's dive into the research component. And guys, the way I kind of also treat these lectures is like I'm just, it's a feedback report to my species. I'm just reporting back to my species. Right now, where it's like, we are the human kingdom, but we haven't understood the crown is on the head of the future generations, and we, in some sense, serve the greatness of the human species' legacy. So, anyways, beauty is a very important idea, and death is a very important idea. And to understand the relationship of these two ideas, I think is fascinating on its own. So I have asked AI, and I kind of had like a conversation with AI when let me see its answers. Okay, so guys, it's a bunch of prompts, bunch of answers. It may be that these answers might feel like they're repeating, but whatever. I'm just gonna read for you the research. I think it's good enough to share. So AI says this passage, or sorry, I'll read it from here. It says one, death as the frame, the ontological necessity of finitude. So keep in mind, guys, the title of this lecture is Beauty is Meaningless Without Death. We're diving into that idea. And the research component is I'm reading this AI generated thing. It's right now 12:03 a.m. July 4th, 2025, Toronto, Canada. So one, death is the frame, the ontological necessity of finitude. Beauty drives its intensity. Okay, I need a better song. Okay, I can work with this. Beauty derives. So, guys, this is AI generated now. What I'm reading for you. One, death is the frame, the ontological necessity of finitude. Beauty drives its intensity from its impermanence. So, beauty drives its intensity from its impermanence. Okay, this song. Beauty drives its intensity from its impermanence. In metaphysics, death is not merely an event. It is the frame within which meaning becomes possible. Without finitude, without the awareness that something can end, nothing is urgent, precious, or significant. Heidegger calls this being dash toward dash death. Something can end, the idea that humans, in knowing they will die, are capable of truly caring, valuing, and experiencing. Think of a cherry blossom. Why is it more beautiful than a plastic flower? Because it withers. Its mortality gives it poignancy. In Japanese aesthetics, this is called mono no aware, the gentle sadness of transience that intensifies perception. Without death, beauty would have no edge, no consequence, no moment to crystallize. It says, beauty is intense because it ends. Death gives beauty its shape, urgency, and value. Without death, nothing would feel precious. So yeah, guys, maybe like these live streams don't feel precious. It's because I'm alive. Holy shit. Wow. They say we take life for granted. It's like I didn't know we're doing it to ourselves. Two, biological and evolutionary psychology. Why we notice what fades. From a biological standpoint, beauty often signals vitality, fertility, and youth. Traits that time eventually takes away. Evolution wired us to notice that. Excuse me. Evolution wired us to notice what won't last because survival and reproduction are time sensitive. But beyond function, human beings evolved to seek beauty not just for survival but for meaning. The brain's limbic system responds strongly to fleeting things, sunsets, falling leaves, youthful faces. Because these signal change and change triggers emotion, neuroscience suggests our emotional responses are stronger to fleeting visual stimuli than to static or infinite ones. That which fades moves us more deeply than what remains. Summary: our biology is tuned to notice things that fade. We're emotionally wired to find beauty in things that don't last because they're meaningful. So, guys, yeah, it is true. I mean, why is something beautiful is because we're not always there to see it. But if we saw that beautiful thing every day, like if you go and ask the security guard of like the Mona Lisa, what do you think of the Mona Lisa? The guy's like, I hate looking at this painting, bro. You know, and we'd be like, understandable. Something that people like travel to France to see. This dude, because he's seeing every day, doesn't care for. Do you know? And that's the issue. You have to be like, what am I seeing every day that I haven't cared for? Right? Everybody's living hidden lives, you know? What a relationship is, how much those hidden lives can be shared, or how much new moments of co-creation allow two souls to discover how they're real together, you know. And it's also like the decency and the kindness of a soul always shows, you know. For me, I every person's nature, they can't hide it. You can't, it's kind of strange, but like you can't hide your nature because it's the force. It's like how it's like the design of your life force. Anyways, guys, I'm going to keep reading this. 3. Aesthetic philosophy. Beauty as the dance between form and disappearance. In Kantian aesthetics, beauty is disinterested pleasure. We love it not to own it, but because it elevates our awareness. Yet if beauty were eternal, it would lose this effect. As Susan Sontag wrote, in quotations, to photograph is to participate in another person's mortality. What a beautiful sentence. That means anybody who's asked me to take a photo in this life was like, you know, they're like, yo, man, participate in my mortality. Art captures what life cannot hold. Beauty is powerful because it reminds us of something we're always losing. Oscar Wilde wrote that quotations, all beautiful things are made more beautiful by their passing. A rose would not be beautiful if it bloomed forever. Greek philosophers saw beauty in brackets kalos. Kalos. Do you know? It's like, yo, man. Do you know? It's like, imagine the philosopher sees a sunset and looks at like everybody else and it's like, Carlos. And some dude named Carlos is like, what is it? So Greek philosophers saw beauty, kalos, as intimately linked with tragedy. The hero dies, the city falls, the lover leaves. What remains is beauty precisely because it cannot last. What remains is beauty precisely because it cannot last. Beauty and loss are twins. We find beauty not just in what is pleasing, but in what reminds us that everything is passing. Yeah, do you know what I mean? That means like, why does this live stream have value? I've noticed some people who they don't listen to the lectures, they only listen to the live streams. And I was like, yo man, why is this more valuable than any other moment in the past? Do you know? And I think it's the fascination to see where we are going or how far we've gone. I think it's that maybe. Anyways, we go to 4, theology and mysticism. Death awakens the soul to beauty. In Sufi metaphysics, and guys, by the way, I'm not Sufi, you know. In Sufi metaphysics, beauty, in brackets, Jamal, is one of the names of God. Yeah, it is true. One of divine God's name is the most beautiful. In Sufi metaphysics, beauty, in brackets, Jamal, is one of the names of God, but its realization only awakens in the heart once one becomes conscious of Maut, in brackets, death. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in quotations, "Remember death often, for it erases desire and brings presence." Death is not to be feared, but embraced as a sacred mirror. Only through it do we see the divine face behind the veil of appearances. Christian mystics like Saint John of the Cross spoke of, in quotations, the dark night of the soul, where one must spiritually die to the world to see the true radiance behind all things. The cross itself, a symbol of death, becomes the portal to glory. In Buddhism, beauty lies in the impermanence of the world, in brackets, anicca. All that is conditioned fades, and in that fading lies awakening. In spirituality, death is not the end. It's the mirror through which we awaken to divine beauty. We must see through endings to glimpse eternity. It's like the person's like, wait a minute, you telling me I need to die before I notice I'm eternal? Whoa. And they're like, yo man, what do you want us to say? You're considering your right now to be mortality. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes you can't blame the higher planes for how we haven't noticed something about our own plane of being, you know. Then we get to 5, art, grief, and the sublime. Beauty as wound and wonder. Artists often say grief sharpens the eye. After loss, we see the world more clearly. A hand, a face, a bird's flight, all suddenly radiant. Death awakens what psychologists call, in quotation, existential appreciation, the heightened capacity to feel awe and tenderness. The sublime in art, the feeling of terror and beauty combined, often involves death, storms, ruins, galaxies, silence. Beauty that confronts death, in brackets like Michelangelo's Pietà or Goya's black paintings, stirs the soul precisely because it touches what we most fear. And what we most long to transcend. Beauty becomes sublime when it touches grief. The nearness of death reveals the full emotional depth of the beautiful. 6, culture and memory. Beauty is what death cannot take. Why do we build cathedrals, write poems, make films, paint faces? Because we want to preserve something death cannot touch. Every act of beauty is a rebellion against disappearance. That means, guys, every beautiful person on this planet, like every beautiful woman I've seen on this planet, it's like beauty has been rebelling against disappearance by in some sense trying to show the master of its class, like mastering its own class. Do you know? What's very fascinating, it's not just like physically everybody has a different DNA, but it's like how we look at things is also different. How the individual is aware of itself. Like right now I'm giving myself a value. You guys are giving me, evaluating me. Do you know what I mean? Everything, like, so there's so many angles to everything. Do you know what I mean? That it's like when will the infinite processing end for there to be judgment actually? So beauty, the temporary makes life beautiful. The fact that I might not be giving the lectures for some time might make the lectures I will give in the future more beautiful. Who knows? You know, maybe the fact that, I don't know, like, to me, of course, the system admin is in the driver's seat. But when I think about how do humans build paradise on Earth, it's like what are it, can we be aware of the blind spots that if we become aware of, we immediately advance. Beauty is how cultures outlive the body, how memory becomes architecture, how loss becomes legacy. But even these things fade. What lasts is not the object, but the experience of beauty. Even if a city crumbles, if a viewer once cried before its light, it was never meaningless. As Camus said, Albert Camus, in quotations, a single sentence will suffice for modern man. He fornicated and read the papers, and after that he died. And yet, even in that absurdity, beauty allows the human spirit to rise. Beauty is how we defy death. We make things that last longer than us. Not to be immortal, but to be remembered. Yet even that memory fades, and still it was worth it. Beauty. So the last thing AI says is beauty is meaningless without death. Or excuse me, the sentence beauty is meaningless without death means that without endings, nothing would be cherished. Death is the invisible artist that frames the masterpiece. It awakens the heart, deepens the soul, and sharpens the eye. Beauty without death would be sterile. It is only in the passing, the fading, the vanishing that we feel the full weight of wonder of what is beautiful. From biology to mysticism, from evolution to art, all human meaning flowers from the soil of impermanence. And then I asked AI, what is the deepest implication of this? I was like, all right, AI, go. So AI says the deepest implication of beauty is meaningless without death is this: death is not the enemy of beauty, it is its source. What the fuck? They're like, yo, man, this whole time I was scared of death, but the impermanence of reality is what made the permanent beautiful, what made, that which was, like, what we had beautiful, This is why, like, why can't a human being, like, get into a relationship with a robot? Because every human being has a soul, which means they're an unknown life force, and we don't know how they will move. You know? Pretty much death to me is like, okay, right now I'm knowing life in a conditional way, and at some point, if the conditional structure of it fades, the conditional aspects of the structure of my meaning fades, is it going to be like a roller coaster ride where you're like, all right, I have faith in what's going to happen. Let's see. And this is like me thinking after I'm on my deathbed as an old man, and I'll be like, did I do enough? Did AI says at the deepest level, this statement reframes our entire. So, death is not the enemy of beauty, it is its source. AI says at the deepest level, this statement reframes our entire relationship to reality, value, and time. It implies that without limits, there can be no meaning. Without impermanence, there is no urgency, no depth, no awareness. Beauty is not in the thing, but in the encounter. And that encounter is only profound because it might be the last. In other words, to truly see beauty is to live with the knowledge that all things pass and yet to love them anyway. This is not just poetic, it is ontological. In brackets about being itself, existential in brackets about how we live, and spiritual in brackets about what awakens the soul. The ultimate implication is that death gives life dimension. And without that dimension, even eternity would feel flat, static, and unworthy of love. It says the academic frame in like academically this parallels Heidegger's being toward death, which is summarized as human authenticity arises from mortality. Buddhist anicca, which suggests impermanence as the root of awakening. Sufi metaphysics, which suggests death reveals the Jalal majesty behind the Jamal beauty. Camus' absurdism, meaning exists despite death or even because of it. Death makes every moment count. Without death, nothing would matter, not love, not art, not life. And because we die, we see beauty, we feel love and craving. Guys, it says, so death is not the end of beauty, it is the reason beauty exists at all. So, guys, this is why life is valuable. I'll tell you my honest opinion here. See, I have thought about, like, all right, man, this is going to end at some point. Life is just going to, like, it's going to change from this conditional settings. The settings of my awareness are going to change at some point. And I'm like, okay, while it's being set in this specific way, for me, you don't understand. Like, if you asked me 20 years ago, like, do you think you're going to become a podcaster? I'd be like, bro, like, I'd be so shy, I probably wouldn't even probably leave that moment. Do you know what I mean? But I'm telling you, it's like you don't know. The future will surprise you. Who you will be in the future, you don't know. And it all depends on how much you've accepted, your limitations. And on some level, you should always, like, your limitations are there to show you what else there is. So after this, I asked AI, so what would your explanation of the value of endings for beginnings be? AI said the value of endings for beginnings is the most profound truths in existence, spiritual, psychological, biological, and cosmic. Here's how I would explain it in the clearest, most advanced, and beautiful way. Endings give birth to meaningful beginnings. An ending is not the opposite of a beginning. It's precondition. Without endings, beginnings would be meaningless repetition. It is only when something ends that we can start something new, with intention, awareness, and growth. In nature, the leaf must fall for the bud to form. The cycle of death and rebirth is not poetic metaphor. It is the actual structure of reality. In thermodynamics, systems decay, and from their decay, in thermodynamics, systems decay, and from their decay, new complexity emerges. In psychology, the end of an identity, a belief, a phase, a relationship creates the fertile ground for a more mature self to emerge. To truly begin something meaningful, you must first let something go. Only an empty hand can grasp something new. Spiritually, every sacred transformation is preceded by a death. In Islam, Tawbah, in brackets, repentance, is the death of the old self. In Christianity, resurrection only comes after the cross. In Buddhism, the ego dissolves before enlightenment arises. And emotionally, you don't fall in love unless you're willing to end the safety of solitude. You don't pursue a new dream unless you're willing to end your comfort zone. So endings give beginnings their power. Without the closure of the old, the new cannot be true. Without the death of illusion, truth cannot take root. My God, AI is like next level poetry. So, AI says, summary, endings clear space. They make beginnings possible. They give beginnings meaning, urgency, and depth. The end of oneself, one era, or one story opens the gate to something higher. So the value of endings is not in what they remove, but in what they allow to rise. To fear endings is to fear transformation. To embrace endings is to awaken life. AI says, after this, I asked AI, I mean, how is death affecting or creating our value system? AI is like, that's what you meant. No, AI says, now you're asking the core question behind all human meaning. All right, let's go to a new song here. How does death shape the value system of humanity? Here's the most advanced and profound explanation. And guys, this is ChatGPT 401. Death is the architect of value. Death is the defining constraint of human life. Because we know we will die, we're forced to choose what matters. Without death, there would be no pressure, no limits, no finiteness. And without limits, value cannot emerge. A value system is a hierarchy of importance. We rank some things above others because we don't have infinite time. If we're immortal, everything could be delayed, postponed, taken for granted. But death forces prioritization. It creates urgency and sacrifice, and through that, we develop ethics, goals, beauty, and even love. Wow. Guys, do you know what this means? That means this fear of death fueled, like, took us to a state where the possibility of the concepts of urgency, sacrifice, you know, and how through those we develop ethics, goals, beauty, and even love. Like, you see, like, that's when I say we're like, you open your eyes and it's like a value proposition. It's like, how you're valuing reality is like very fascinating. You gotta wonder about it, really. AI says death is the invisible sculptor of every decision. Oh my God. AI says we value courage because life is fragile. We value kindness because time is short. We value truth because illusions waste the precious life we have. We value love because we don't get to hold it forever. We only form values because we know life ends. Death forces us to choose what's worth living and dying for. Two, death creates the need for legacy. Humans are the only species that mourns, buries, and writes poems about their mortality. This is because we're the only species that builds legacy, and legacy only matters if death is real. Philosophers like Ernest Becker argued that nearly all culture, art, religion, morality, civilization itself, is a response to death anxiety. We try to create something that will outlive us because we know we won't last. This is called terror management theory in psychology, the idea that human behavior is deeply motivated by a fear of death. So our value system is shaped by this need to leave behind meaning. We build, we write, we protect, we raise families, we fight for ideals, not because we live forever, but because we don't. Our fear of death drives us to create legacies. We value what makes our short lives matter in the long run. Guys, I kind of, for the first time in my life, I kind of understand why there's so many women nowadays monetizing their beauty. Because it's like yourself is not there forever. Do you know? It's all about what remains the next day. Do you know they're trying to capture their immortal youth. And some in the market, some companies come and say, yo, we can monetize that. And it's led to a culture where the sacredness of, like, it's like, do you know what I mean? Think of it this way, because we wear clothing, there's like an inner realm to the body and there's an outer realm to the body, culturally. So I'm saying the whole point of reality is that we're veiled, and just like how we're not telepathic, I'm trying to say that when you look at the human behavior and human psyche, it kind of notices it will die. So it looks at the moment and being like, okay, I need to start valuing things and wonder about what the greatest values are. right? And when it wonders about what the greatest value is, it realizes it has to be, it's like your life is trying to figure out a strategy that will outlive you. Some people do it like with their physicality. I'm using my communication, you know? That means I was like, all right, I have a DNA that nobody has. I've lived a life perhaps nobody else has. What have I discovered? Perhaps the sharing the insights, like back in the day they would bring a buffalo back to the tribe like a hunter. Now I'm bringing, like, my findings of how far, like, what is truly beyond the simulated domains of man's certainty. Do you know? 3. Death makes the abstract real. Without death, concepts like justice, freedom, sacrifice, and honor would be theoretical. But death tests them. A soldier dies for freedom. Suddenly that value becomes real. A martyr dies for truth. Suddenly truth is sacred. A parent sacrifices decades of life for a child. Suddenly love is transcendent. Death makes values cost something, and what costs becomes sacred. This is why we grieve the unjust death, why we honor the noble death, why we tell stories of those who face death with courage. The moment death enters a story, it gains weight. Death gives weight to values. It transforms ideals into sacred truths because someone was willing to die for them. 4. Death as the moral mirror. Because death limits life, it reflects back our choices. Imagine if you knew you'd die in 1 year. Your priorities would shift immediately. You would no longer value social approval, petty status games, or accumulating meaningless things. You'd return to essential values: truth, love, connection, purpose. This is why many spiritual traditions say remember death often. Not to be morbid, but to remember what is truly valuable. Death brings moral clarity. It helps you see the eternal inside the temporary. And that's what makes a value system not just functional but sacred. Summary: death helps us reflect on what truly matters. It cuts through illusion and returns us to core truths. AI says final condensed summary: death gives rise to all human values. It forces choice, which creates value. It inspires legacy, which creates meaning. It makes sacrifice sacred, which creates morality. It clarifies what matters, which creates wisdom. In this way, death is not the destroyer of meaning, it is the womb of meaning, and our values are the children born from knowing that we must die. Okay, that's a ridiculously deep statement. In this way, death is not the destroyer of meaning, it is the womb of meaning, and our values are the children born from knowing that our values are the children born from knowing that we must die. And our values are the children, and our values are the children born from knowing that we are the children born from knowing that we must die. Okay, I get it. It's kind of saying like, okay, death is giving an opportunity for, in some sense, for us to, let's say, value the future. So, guys, that completes the research portion. And some final thoughts here. You know, if I right now wondered about what is beautiful to me, this is how I would kind of relate to the title. For me, the most beautiful, okay, is that which is aligned to the original operating system of reality. That means truth is like my on the top of the hierarchy of beauty. Okay, that means it's like after God and that view, the next view that fascinates me is the advanced civilization. These two words are the most beautiful, fascinating words. And why is it beautiful to me? Because why is it even significant? Because it's possible. Behind our eyes, it's possible. In front of our eyes, it can be. Like every invention that has ever been invented on Earth. But now it's like we have to live in accordance to the advanced civilization behind our eyes to advanced civilization in front of our eyes. The most advanced civilization on earth is a divine civilization, the final civilization for a religious person. I'm a Muslim futurist. So for in that view, for me the final civilization is like heaven, is an example. Yeah, guys, it's all just because there's an opportunity to do something. If I was immortal, I would be like, does it matter if I give 10,000 lectures or if I give, like, 1 million lectures? At some point, it doesn't matter. It's like the value of it is while we're here. And you know what I'm honestly realizing? Deep down, everybody's like a soul that's kind of like, yo, man, it's like, is there, where it's like every person's soul is seeking, I don't know how to say it, but it's like divine advancement. For we are present in the divine. And the most advanced state is that which is beyond the world room, and that is God. So if God is beyond the world room, if pretty much I'm saying if we're right now inside a simulation and truly wondering what is the most advanced state we can be in this simulation, it's like also asking what is the most beautiful and why is it that in my view, after one reaches ultimate power, like one attains like power, do you know that the next thing they're going to notice they're missing is beauty? But then beauty is realizing it's not about what you have, but it's about how you are. You know? That means the value of life is not just always based on how things are. Think of it this way. What what you feel, what outside of you means is dependent on your context of meaning at first, unless you have the ability to discriminate between the inner realms and the outer realms. That means when I look at this object in front of me, sure, I call it a tree, but someone in a different language calls it a different term. In Farsi, they call it deracht. Do you know? So what I'm saying is, like, there's different words. It's like we can associate different symbols to the object, but the object is what it is. The object is like imagination. You didn't need to imagine, but we're imagining the significance of meaning. We're imagining how much we know others. You know. And to be honest, like, why is this valuable? Like honestly, guys, it's true. Our greatest motivational teacher is death. Like that's the greatest motivational coach. They're like, yo, man, I need some self-help and inspiration. And I'll be like, yo, or even therapy. To me, just being aware of death is like the greatest therapy. Just realizing, okay, At some point life is going to end, and just like we've naturally been born, we're going to let like nature, the system, when it's time naturally we end. And at some point, because there's something to lose, what we're holding has value. So gratitude doesn't just begin by somebody telling you, yo, man, be grateful. It's just realizing how what that exists in your presence could have not existed. It's like the people you had met could have like never had met. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I do have this, I don't know if it's a death, but sometimes I'm like, yo, man, what if I had never existed? Like, how much would I care for things still? And I would still be fascinated where it goes. To be honest, for me, reality is very fascinating because it's dynamic. We're treating ourselves as a noun, and we think the world has to be a noun too, to kind of fit into simple storytelling. But in actuality, the world is an unknown verb, and ourself is an unknown verb, our true self. So at some point, it's like something, this giant event is happening, where one part of it, we're like 7 times 10 to the power of 27 atoms, the average person, and the whole cosmos, they're estimating like 10 to the power of 80 atoms. So we're like this tiny portion of manifestation, being like, what does it all mean though? So I guess just realize this, I think for me, just to tell you that just see the significance in this idea. You know, it's not just beauty, it's like reverence, love. It's like if you go, I did this once and for a lecture, like years ago, I think, where I looked up the greatest love stories in history, and all of them had sad endings. And I was like, why are these the greatest love stories? And I realized because it was showing that even though there was going to be loss, what is accessible is beautiful. Beauty is not just dependent on, how do I say it? It's not just random. It's that you realize what is in your experience and what could not be. It's as if, like, imagine you're someone, you don't like your body, okay, and you for a moment realize, wait a minute, I only have like 40 years or whatever amount of years to be this body, and at some point I'm not going to be this body anymore. Right? So it's like suddenly it's like you're not your body, you have a body. Okay, and it's like, okay, what is the value of this body? Right? And in the same way, after you're wondering about, like, done wondering about the value of your body, and have just accepted the fascinating position, you're like, yo, man, I'm a result of like 13.8 billions of years evolution right now. Do you know what I mean? It's like that's how advanced I am. So I'm trying to say that anytime you realize you can lose something, strangely it becomes beautiful. So why is youth beautiful? Because you're not always young. If everybody was young, do you know, imagine everybody on this planet, like imagine we were like, this is too sci-fi. This is like next level sci-fi stuff I'm saying to you right now. But like, it's like that's what usually, as it's normal for a futurist. But I'll tell you this. Imagine right now in the future, I don't know, somehow bio nanotechnology somehow went next level. Okay? And everybody could shapeshift, like some sort of vertical DNA transfer or something could happen, gene transfer or whatever. Right? So I'm saying, imagine you could shapeshift and everybody could be any age they wanted. You don't need to go and do like weird plastic surgery. You could just be any age you wanted. Do you know? You could shapeshift to any form, any shape. Do you know what I mean? That means if there were people at that point, I would say the identity would become androgynous for a shape-shifting civilization. If somebody's like, "What do you mean, Mr. Within?" That means, like, I'm not. someone who should really be commenting about this, but I'm saying, for example, you look at human identity and human consciousness, at least in some sectors of the human species, has reached a state of mind where it's not basing its biological identity to dictate its behavioral role. Okay, so what does this mean? That means it's like you're looking at, let's say, a male biological entity, or a female biological. Let's say you're looking at a female biological entity, and that female biological entity is behaving like a male biological entity. Okay, what does that mean? That means it's the will of that soul is not is not um is not is not depending is its value system based on its biology. So what does this mean? This means that just like how you don't have the same sense of self like years ago, people just can realize they can kind of like opt into different archetypes. But the whole point of it is what you think is the character is your subjective character, actually your biological you, right? And what is the value and why have we been born in specific design? Okay, I'm speaking not as like some human being with personal opinions. I'm speaking to you as a designer. Okay, a designer means before I think about what's right or wrong, I'm just looking at what is the geometry of how the moment is changing. Okay, and so for me, I'm saying, okay, so we're looking at human psychology. We're looking at the evolution of human psychology. There was a time where if you asked the human being, who are you? It would be like a caveman. It would act like a savage beast. So from savage beast psychology, we've evolved to civilized human psychology. But now civilized human psychology has opened up for itself a hierarchy of values and behaviorology. Do you know that means you're not just conditioned in it's kind of like how you behave is also a language. Okay? Now the issue is that we have this view that a person is just one thing, but from another view, what a person considers themselves to be is actually like multiple simulations being held at the same time. Do you know what that means? That means the universe is right now in a simulated process that has a beginning and ending. The galaxy is in a simulated process that has a beginning and ending. Do you know galaxies have that, and planets have a, but the planet is simulated, and my biological body is simulated, and my psychological behavior is simulated. Do you know? And in some sense, at some point, do you understand what I'm telling you? I'm telling you that it's like we're in this specific existential condition that is allowing a sort of experiential awareness to the whole thing. Traditionally, they had the view of body, mind, soul, meaning that the soul was the seat of awareness. That means what you actually are, your true identity, is your whole awareness to how your body is a part of it and how every thought or whatever. It's just like you're the awareness. It's like if your whole life you've been identifying with a body that has been moving and making noise, you realize your soul is also being the silence and stillness of it. It's the awareness, though. It's like strangely to the human itself, at least for me as a human member of the human species, I could tell you, it feels like my soul is what I am before I need to be anything else. It's strange how to say it. So, guys, beauty is honestly like it's like the evolution of power. There's some people, I said this in the previous lecture, there's some people who have beautiful eyes, that means their eye color is beautiful, and there's some people who have beautiful eyes, that means how far that soul's awareness is to their own being. And even beyond their own being. See, the point of it is not just you. The point of it is, see, right now, if life was just like, yo, man, everybody has their own truth and kumbaya, I'll be like, that doesn't make sense. Because if life was meant to just be our eyes being the only truth to it, then why do we need to exist in the same server? We're all in the same physical place. In front of my eyes, my body is on the same planet as 8 billion other humans. Do you understand? You know what that means? That means we're all inside a multiplayer online game, and there's a reason we're all in this game. There's a reason we're human, and the ego is trying to make us forget about the responsibility of being what we are. There's an incredible depth to it. There's so much that is unknown. There's so many ways to be that we don't even know. But the future generations will laugh at what we missed. As we look at the past generations, and I'm like, only if they were civilized back then, how much more civilized would we be now? You know, I think it was Alexander the Great or some dude who's like, I came and I conquered. Let me see what the quote was. Okay, so there's this Latin phrase that was actually spoken by Julius Caesar, not Alexander the Great, after his swift victory at the Battle of Zela in 47 BC, where it's called Veni Vidi Vici. Julius Caesar said, I came, I saw, I conquered. So Alexander the Great actually doesn't say that. Julius Caesar says that, but Alexander AI says, as for Alexander, there's the legendary line, when Alexander saw the breadth of his domain, he wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer. Wow. That's ridiculous. Anyways, guys, back to it. So, my final comment is, I don't know. For me, it's very fascinating that everything that I've seen as beautiful, everything I've revered, anything that has kind of like fascinated me, it's because I'm not going to always be here to be fascinated by them. You know what I mean? That's why. Because every moment that I come and record these talks, it's just like like imagine my whole life. Every day I'm living, I'm just experiencing my day, and then at the end it finishes. These lectures are like just a fragment of my day that lived on to the next day and beyond. I'm kind of like, I'm not a person who's immortal right now, but you might not believe it. I'm immortalizing like hours of my day. And that's beautiful to me because my lectures are going to outlive me. That's why really I think people listen, maybe are interested in the live streams. Because I'm not going to be here forever in the same way, like all of us are not going to be here forever in the same way the species maybe is not going to be here forever. But if we're truly smart and advanced, and God willing, we in some sense, have the most advanced, exit out of this realm. But whatever it is for me, I'm like, okay, in the same way these guys are saying it, like these emperors are saying it, I would say it's kind of like, I entered the world. I was born in a system. I updated the system, and then I left the system. And what was the system called? The advanced civilization of the advanced humanity. I am honestly telling you, I'm a human being that is bored. I'm bored of the past and I'm bored of the present. 12,000 days, I don't know how. And I don't mean I'm not talking about it on an emotional level. For me, like death is an idea I don't touch. It's just a door that at some point in life God would just, present. It would be the next door to walk through at some point. But it's something that I just leave it all in the hands of the system admin. God truly knows when our time is. And for me, if anybody's like, hey, Mr. Within, what's the ultimate motivation behind everything you're doing? I'll be like, it's my fascination, guys. It's just I'm too fascinated by this. It's too specific, too unique. And there's so many opportunities to advance civilization. It's like behind my eyes, I'm seeing the solutions, but I haven't even. It's like we have to, 8 billion of us have to create the solutions in the outer realms. It's like without a species, the self is meaningless. Without a world, the species is meaningless. Without a system admin, the world is meaningless. We are in the presence of the moments of our lives. Do you understand? Like people are like, yo, man, that person's a poet. I'm like, guys, poetry is just looking at life and being like, yo, it's happening once in this way. Only tonight I have these ideas and I'm speaking in this way about them. Tomorrow it may be different. And that's the thing. Any person, let's say there's person A and person B, and they're passing by and they don't communicate, it's as if they're missing those who they were at that moment of time. That means the thing about shyness that kind of like a little bit bothered me about my own shyness in my youth was that people never got to see who I was actually. I was more an observer rather than a participant in just the values of my own life because society had kind of, I was in some sort of paralysis of not being able to like or trust myself. So I didn't really like people and trust them. But I was never like violent or savage. I was more kind of like don't do anything and nothing happens, kind of person. It's like less input, less output kind of vibe. But I'm trying to say it's like life is so much more bigger than whatever opinions we have. Is like, yo, man, what's the wisest thing we can do? And the sage and the wisdom said, and let's say the source of wisdom said, all right, first take the box off your head that you put on yourself, take the box off that other people put on you, take off the box that's over your head that in some society put on your head. And if you're truly brave, start from scratch and truly wonder about your life and understand it, and that way you can be responsible for the value. Anything you don't understand, you can't be responsible for. Even with people, if there's a person you can't understand, how can you truly care? And when I say understand, I don't mean like you can completely understand them, but every person's headed somewhere, so in our co-creations in the future we can kind of like understand. It's like we can't see how our souls moved from the past up to this point, but from this point to the future, if humanity consciously builds an advanced civilization together, they would see how advanced the souls are. It's the emergence of the awareness that can notice the advance. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. This was a very deep idea. Share your comments, share your ideas in the comment section. Like, truly. And thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful.